of Literature Podcast. I'm Mich.
And I'm Joanna, and today we're going to be reading some fan fiction.
Lord help us. Alright, keep in mind that we don't usually read fan fiction, so we didn't really know what we were going to be doing today, but whatever, we're going to do it anyways. So, this week we've scoured the internet to find fan fiction. First of all, I didn't know where to even look for fan fiction, so I just Googled a bunch of shit. And I found one that was very long, and it was about Rowan and a Lynn, and it said it was a lemon. Like, we don't have many lemons in this series. And I was like, cool! So I read through that fan fiction, and there was no lemons. And I was disappointed. But the other day, I decided to Google it. And did you know that lemon is actually a thing in fan fiction?
No.
Yeah, okay, so in the world of fandom fan fiction, a lemon is a story which consists of sexually explicit themes and situations. Lime is a romantic and cuddly story instead of sexual. And lemons are sexual. And I was like, well, that makes more sense because it was a very dirty story. Needless to say, I'm not reading that one today. Instead, we went and we found a couple stories on fanfiction.net that are shorter. Well, mine are shorter. So I'm going to read a couple of those. So I should just dive right on in and go. I haven't actually read any of mine because I just found mine this morning. So we'll see how this progresses together. All right. So the first one that I'm going to be reading is Harry Potter Hunger Games Truth or Dare by Harry Potter and Twilight Fanfics. Harry looked at his watch. It was 10:30 p.m. Hermione, hurry up, Ron shouted, making him jump. Seconds later, they were hurrying down the stairs, past the Great Hall, finally leaving Hogwarts. They entered Hogsmeade, and then there's an author's note. Is it Hogsmeade or Hogsmeade? And ran down into the Shrieking Shack. Waiting for them there were Katniss Everdeen, Prim, Peeta, and Mich. Gale is getting Effie, Rue, who somehow survived, and Finnick. Hopefully he makes it here soon. Katniss rolled her eyes. We managed to pursue Mother and Hazel, who's Gale's mom apparently, not to come. To pursue Mother and Hazel. To persuade, I'm assuming they mean. Prim informed them before hugging Hermione, who patted her head. Half an hour later, Draco Malfoy, Pansy Parkinson, and Ginny Weasley walked in. Why the bloody hell? Ron began before being cut off by Ginny. I bumped into them. There was a subdued silence as Ron looked down. To fill the awkward silence, Gale strode in, leading the others with Luna Lovegood, Neville Longbottom, Crabbe Goyle, and Blaise Zabini. Finally, everyone is here. Now let's start, Harry whispered. Now let's start. Harry pulled a bottle out of his pocket and announced, everyone must have a sip. This is Vitura serum, and makes you tell the truth. He passed it around, and when everyone had taken some, it was empty. So he put it in the middle of the newly formed circle. Hermione volunteered to go first and spun the bottle. She blushed when it landed on Draco Malfoy. Truth or dare? She asked nervously. Dare, naturally, he replied, puffing out his chest boastfully. Show off, Ron muttered quietly. Hermione thought for a minute, then giving him an evil look, she said, I dare you to kiss Katniss on the lips for 2 minutes. That's a very long kiss. Katniss gasped in disgust. While Draco looked at Hermione and punched him again. While Draco looked like Hermione had punched him again. Like Hermione. Okay. Before he could lean over to her, Harry said loudly, Good one, Miney. Then Draco kissed her passionately, and Peeta looked furious. The end. So that was chapter 1 and 2. And the author says that they're going to be updating it soon. So maybe we'll be able to see how this progresses in the future. I think we're going to be linking the links below, right?
We are.
For the stories, so you guys can see how this progresses if you're interested.
All right. For my first one, I found, what is it called? The Sorting Hat and the Bird Flu by the 8th Weasley Kid. It says, disclaimer, I do not own any part of the HP universe. Summary. What if the Sorting Hat had the flu the night of Harry's sorting? Chapter 1. The Sorting Hat, otherwise known as Irving, had a dreadful case of the bird's flu. He had caught it from Fox, and he was not at all happy about it. His brim was stuffed up, his point was droopy, and all over he felt as if he'd been given to Fluffy as a chew toy. He had He had politely requested that he hold off the sorting until he was well, and then, when that didn't work, he be begged. It says be, but I think it's supposed to say he begged. Still, Dumbledore refused. Farewell, Albus, but I cannot be held responsible for any of my actions this evening. Normally, Irving was too happy to open the sorting with a song. If fact, I think that's supposed to be in fact, he had spent weeks preparing one, but he simply wasn't in the mood. So instead he simply said, I have the flu thanks to a bird, and I'm here is completely absurd. Centuries old, I've never been sick. Now on with the sorting, at your house I will pick.
Ooh.
Short but to the point. Abbot Hannah, Professor McGonagall called the first student's name. A pink-faced blonde girl happily sat on the stool. Let's see, said the hat with a sniffle. Irving really didn't feeling like wasting what little energy he had on rummaging through the girl's mind, picking through her life story. Instead, he simply made a quick analysis. Your mother was in Hufflepuff, and your father is in Gryffindor. You like the color red. There we go, Gryffindor. Hannah was surprised, to say the least. She had always thought she was more like her mom. Oh well, she figured the hat knows best. With a small smile, the girl headed over to the cheering table of crimson and gold. Bones Susan. The girl gave a small giggle as she sat on the stool. Bones. Oh yes, I remember your aunt. Sharp as a tack, that one. Yes, my auntie is very smart, but Ravenclaw. Susan's jaws dropped slight, but quietly descended the stool and made her way over to the new table nonetheless. Irving gave a barking cough just as he came to rest on Terry Boot's head. Okay, Boot, where would you like to go? You're asking me? Sure, why not? Well, Gryffindor sounds the best. Very well. Gryffindor! Terry grinned excitedly and instantly dashed over to the House of the Brave. At this point, Albus Dumbledore was starting to get worried. It would seem that Irving was a bit off his game. This may become a problem when it was Harry's turn to be sorted. As the sorting went on, Irving was feeling less and less up to par, and his sorting became more and more bizarre. Brocklehurst Mandy went to Slytherin. Brown Lavender went to Hufflepuff. Bulstrode Millicent to Gryffindor, as did Crabbe Vincent. Grumbling complaints began to echo through the hall, and Dumbledore himself had to demand silence. Irving felt no pity. He felt the Hellmaster. He told the headmaster he was ill. This was his own fault for making him work. He sent Justin Finch Fletchery to Ravenclaw and Hermione Granger and Gregory Goyle to Hufflepuff. When Neville Longbottom was placed in Slytherin, the nervous young boy promptly fainted and had to be levitated to the hospital wing. Morag McDonald... Fuck. Morag McDougal was quickly sorted into Gryffindor after the hat had asked her favorite animal, and she had replied lion. Draco Malfoy marched proudly up to the stool, confident smirk plastered on his arrogant face. Ah, Malfoy, your lot normally go to Slytherin. That's right, so put me there, you disgusting old dust rag, and be quick about it. I don't want to get whatever it is you seem to have. Dust rag, you really shouldn't be insulting me. I do, after all, decide where you will live for the next 7 years of your life. Put me in Slytherin, or I swear to Merlin, I'll Gryffindor. After the initial shock, Draco pulled the hat off his head and threw it on the floor and began to jump on it. Professor McGonagall had pulled him off just as Draco drew his wand. Take it back, the boy demanded, attempting to throw hexes his father had shown him. Dark hexes. One struck just inches from Irving, leaving a dark scorch mark in the floor beside him. Once Draco was securely retained and escorted out into the great hall, the sorting continued. Potter Harry, Dumbledore groaned. Irving was not only sick, but had been trampled on and nearly incinerated. This was bad. Very bad. The small boy with wild black hair and glasses softly sat upon the stool. Ah, Mr. Potter. Well, Dumbledore is adamant that you will be placed in Gryffindor. The boy's emerald eyes widened. What? Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that, was I? Irving's brim turned into a smirk. Why would the headmaster want me in Gryffindor? Because my parents were? You truly are a naive little thing. There's so much more going on than you know. I can see that you want to excel in school, that you are eager to learn magic, and you will be accepted by your peers, to have friends. You know what? Screw the headmaster. You want friends, Harry. You will make the most true and loyal friends in Hufflepuff. Harry smiled. Albus paled. Severus Snape laughed, and Irving wished Harry the best of luck. After Harry joined his new friends at Hufflepuff, the Hat realized that he had only placed 2 students in Slytherin, and as such should make up for the absence of students in the House of Snakes. Thomas Dean, the tall black boy, sat down on the stool, and although Irving needed to fill Slytherin, the boy was a possible Muggle-born, so instead Gryffindor. 3 students left. Turpin Lisa, Slytherin. Weasley Ron, Slytherin. What? The red-headed boy screamed. Bloody hell. No, no way. Mr. Weasley, Professor McGonagall. Fierce green eyes narrowed at the tall youth. I do not desire to restrain yet another student this evening. If you could please take your seat at the table. Ron looked over at his brothers, then at Harry, sitting with the Hufflepuffs, and then back to the witch beside him. Swallowing his anger, he gave a small, nodded, and slowly headed over to the table of green and silver. Zabini blazed. Zabini stiffened as he approached the stool. He had to go to Slytherin. It was tradition, at least on his mother's side. His father, well, he had been an African prince, and no, Zabini would not ever had been sorted into a house of duffers like Hufflepuff, brazen idiots like Gryffindors, though he supposed Ravenclaw would be okay, but Slytherin was better. As soon as the hat touched the boy's head, Slytherin. Belize took his breath of relief as he headed over to his mother's old house. Trying not to appear ruffled, Albus gave his normal speech, and the feast commenced. Later that evening, after all the students and most of the staff were slumbering peacefully in their comfy 4-posters, Albus sat at his desk in his office, the Sorting Hat in front of him. Albus took off his half-moon spectacles and slowly rubbed the bridge of his long, crooked nose. Irving. Yes, he replied with a sniffle. I believe I should have taken your advice on postponing the sorting. Yes, you should have. You didn't place Harry in Hufflepuff just to spite me, did you? Irving laughed. What do you think, Albus? The 115-year-old man shook his head before letting out a hearty laugh. I suppose, he finally said, I have learned my lesson. Knowing you, I doubt that, Irving said, but I do hope that you have learned that you cannot always manipulate things to your advantage. Albus placed his glasses back on before pulling out his wand and levitating Irving back to his top shelf. Oh, and I learned that a long time ago, but that doesn't mean I will stop trying. The end. So
I like how his name is Irving.
Right? Irving. Irving. So we have some author's notes at the end. I wrote this as a funny little one-shot, but I may expand it into something more in the future, but not for quite a while. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it.
That was cute.
It was.
Seems like when he has a cold or the bird flu, he's really lets everything go to hell.
Right? Like he just becomes a total hunk.
All right, so my next one, I don't know what it's about. I clicked it because it said it was a Harry Potter Twilight crossover, and that sounded intriguing. So it's called Bella Lilly Potter by VampFan1993. Then the description is, Bella is stuck in Forks, Washington until her brother can defeat Voldemort and make everything safe. While in Forks, she is pretending to date Edward, but in reality, she's in love with Draco. Hi, my name is Bella Lilly Potter. I'm currently hiding out until my brother Harry and his best friends Ron and Hermione get back from defeating Voldemort. So I'm using the name Bella Lola Swan. I am loving living in Forks, Washington. I used a spell and got everyone thinking that I was Charlie Swan's daughter. But as of right now, the real Bella Swan is on vacation with her mother and can't get back to visit her dad. But after all this is over and I can get back to my own world, I will uncast the spell and make everyone forget that I was even here in the first place. So here's a little bit about where we are in Forks, Washington. I'm currently at school with my boyfriend's family. Yes, I had to get a boyfriend for show, but I'll be dumping him soon as I get a letter saying that it's safe for me to return to the wizarding world. Also, my boyfriend and his family is a vampire, so I had to be really careful that they didn't find out who and what I was. I went into science class and sat at my normal spot and found Edward sitting in his spot next to me. I didn't happen to look up at the teacher because I'm way advanced for this class, but it was the highest class that I could be put into, so I just dealt with it. I looked up as the teacher started talking and realized that he wasn't our normal teacher, and also that it was Professor Mad-Eye Moody. I waited patiently for class to be over and told Edward that I would meet him outside. Since this was our last class, I think is what it's supposed to say, I went to the desk and asked Mad Eye, and he just looked at me. That is when I realized that I still had the glamour charm on me. So I told him that it was me and asked him about everyone and to see if it was safe to go back. All he told me though is that there was a surprise waiting for me outside. As I go outside, I see Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Draco, my boyfriend. I go over to them right away. They were the only ones that knew what I looked like with the glamour charm. So that was why they would be able to check in on the news every now and again to make sure that no one found out who I was. The end. So, yeah. I mean, what happens afterwards? Like, when Bella comes to visit, Edward's just like, oh my god, Bella! And she's like, who the hell are you?
Right? Well, this is awkward.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. My next one is very mature, kind of. It's very odd. If you are not 18, maybe skip forward a little bit to the next story. But this one is called Snape Meets the Teletubbies by Christy V. The description is Snape is having trouble getting to his classes, and he has trouble with something on the way. Let's just say the Marauders. This had to be the worst day Snape had experienced in his lifetime, which was a very long time. He had experienced quite a lot of terrible things. He was going to be late for his potions class, the one class that if her messed up, he would be humiliated for the rest of his life. The class with those menacing boys, a.k.a. James and Co., he was running as fast as he could, not looking where he was going. If he had been paying attention, he would have heard someone saying, Plot holius ardagus. Unfortunately, being the stupid idiot that he was, he ran into the plot hole. Normally, a plot hole would be an easy thing for a wizard to fix, but this is Snape, so of course it couldn't be done. To his dismay, he found himself where the grass was greener and the sky was beautiful, clear blue, and the sun had a smiley face. He stared at the sun for a moment, until he started to see spots turning into hot pink fluffy bunnies. He shook away the hot pink fluffy bunnies and looked around, wondering where he should go. Now where is the potions classroom? I could have sworn I was going the right way. Snape. Snape said to himself. Just then he spotted a green and red creature. They were quite strange looking, small heads, large bodies, with strange obstructions on their heads. Snape was confused at the act that they were pursuing. The one with a stick obstruction on his head was thrusting the stick into the other's obstruction that seemed to be a round hole. Snape figured that they were performing some sort of sexual act. So he let them be to go over to a purple one with an inverted triangle obstruction. Excuse me, but what exactly are you? Snape asked. Me, Tinky Winky Teletubby. Could you tell me how to get to the potions classroom? Snape asked. Hug, said the Teletubby that was beginning to resemble Peter Pettigrew. The more he looked at it, it immediately began hugging Snape affectionately. As soon as Tinky Winky said hug, the other Teletubbies came fluttering and hugged Snape until his ribs cracked. Get off me, you barbanchuic things. The Teletubbies' eyes started to fill with water as they looked up at Snape with puppy dog faces. You hurt Lala's feelings, the yellow Teletubby said. You hurt Poe's feelings, said the red one. You hurt Tinky Winky's feelings, said Tinky Winky. You hurt Dipsy's feelings, said the green one. Snape stared at them blankly for a moment, then picked up Tinky Winky by his inverted triangle. Listen, you prat, tell me where the potions classroom is, or else, Snape threatened. Tinky Winky gave him a grin, and exclaimed, Let's make Tubby custard and toast. The Teletubbies started chanting, Custard, toast, custard, toast. In frustration, Snape used an orgasminous spell on all of them, and the liquid poured out onto the grass from their obstructions. The Teletubbies jumped up and down happily. Tubby custard, Tubby custard, Tubby custard. Then they proceeded to lick up the custard off the ground. Snape looked at the custard for a moment. Hey, that looks good. He bent down and helped them lick it up. Custardy, he commented. Toast, 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 the Teletubbies chanted. They dragged Snape to a garden with toast flowers in it. They poured some of the leftover custard on it and treated themselves to some. Snape had a piece to himself and drew extremely uncomfortable in his lower area. The Teletubbies started chanting again. Nap, 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 they stated. They teleported Snape down to a room. By then, Snape was more than a little ill. He was shouting, "Kill the Tubbies! Kill the Tubbies! Kill the Tubbies!" over and over again, for the Teletubbies had driven him to insanity, and the Viagra toast hadn't helped much either. Viagra toast.
Is that what it's called?
Suddenly, the Teletubbies' angelic smiles turned into sinister grins. They attacked Snape, ripping and tearing his clothing apart.
Oh.
They said in a low, cold voice, "Nap." Snape looked upon them with horror. The only words he could choke out were, "Who are you?" The Teletubbies grinned and turned on their TV tummies. The Marauders' faces appeared in the TVs. Tinky Winky's face was Peter's. Poe's face was Sirius. Dipsy was Remus, and Lala was James. Goodbye, Snape. They cackled and opened up another plot hole, throwing Snape inside. He arrived at the other side of the plot hole twitching. A young girl came up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Dora the Explorer. Would you like to help me on my journey to find the sticky tape?" Snape looked up at the sky and shouted in a silent cry, The end.
Well, that really took a really weird turn at the end there.
Author note. I have no idea what the Marauders have done to deserve this. Shakes head. I feel very sorry for them. It is Christy who wrote this. I am just the typist. Poor, poor Marauders.
I think poor Snape.
I think so. I think poor everybody.
I think poor Teletubbies.
Like, poor everyone who just listened to that.
Yeah.
Poor
That was
us
something.
for reading it.
That was interesting.
It was interesting. I will give it that.
All right. My last one is a Goosebumps and Harry Potter crossover. And this one I'm most excited about. I haven't read it, but it sounds cute. So it's The Boy Who Cried Voldemort. It's based on the Girl Who Cried Monster, but also in the Harry Potter universe, it's going to be later on when Harry's grown and he has his kids. James loves to scare his siblings. All right. So this one is by Charging Badger. James Potter knew Voldemort was dead. He knew years before his own father killed him off. But that didn't stop him from telling his little brother and sister spooky stories. He would say how Voldemort had a son who was after the Potters as revenge. He would say how Voldemort had returned as was going to take the 3 Potter children as hostage. And while Albus and Lily were young, it worked. They would get scared and ran to their parents, who were too busy comforting them to tell off James. At least it gave him enough time to hide until it was forgotten. And then Albus grew up and stopped believing it, and told Lily not to either. James needed to scare them, so one day he walked into the drawing room where the rest of his family was and shouted, looking scared, "Voldemort's back! I saw him!" James shivered for extra effects. His parents barely glanced at him. "Come on, James." Albus glared at James in disgust. "We're not falling for this. You can stop the act." No. James covered his mouth, pretending to recall the incident. "No, I wouldn't joke about this, I swear." A tear came from James's eye, and then it worked. His parents shot up, wands out. "Where was he, James? We'll get him." Harry looked every which way for a sign of him, and James started to laugh and laugh and laugh. You guys thought, James wiped the tears from his eyes, banging his head on the floor. "You really, oh wow." Harry growled at his son, who was now silently laughing on the floor. "James, go to your room, we'll deal with you later." James waved a hand behind him before leaving. The look on your faces. James forgot his only good quill in the history of magic classroom. But that was fine. James actually loved the class now that Professor Binns was fired, and they got a new teacher. A new teacher who was cool and fun and made history interesting. Anything in James's first 3 years of history he couldn't remember, but now he knew all the trolls and goblins. Learned this by heart. His new teacher was cool. He even followed Quidditch. big supporter of the Billy Castle bats. You could tell by his hat. He never took off his hat. And then James saw him without it and nearly died. Yes, my master. James poked his head around the classroom door to hear that whisper, and he was confused. Who else was in here? Who had a master? And then grabbing his quill, James saw, through the door of his teacher's office, a face on the back of his teacher's head. Voldemort, once again. He ran out of there and straight to the headmistress's office, Professor McGonagall. Professor Voldemort under his cap. James collapsed on the floor as soon as the door to the office was opened. No, Mr. Potter, your parents warned me about your Voldemort stories, and I refuse to believe them. McGonagall pointed to the door. I simply don't have time to deal with you now. Get out. I will not, I will not, I will not. James was 15, but he was still throwing a tantrum. I can't go back. I'll die. You will not die. Harry pushed his son into the car. Why would you? Because Professor Morton is Voldemort. He'll kill me. Voldemort is back. James, his mother sent him a warning look in the mirror. We've had enough of your Voldemort stories. You're going back to Hogwarts. James had only gotten through his last few weeks of school, knowing that he had others there. But he couldn't survive a whole year of him. He's back. Harry groaned. When your mother and I came to your school a few weeks for our speech, you can try to prove it then. Okay, James was up for the challenge. He was always up for a challenge. Did you see that? James's friend Aaron ran up to him in a rush. What? James jumped up, wand at the ready. I saw Voldemort on the back of Professor Morton's head. James gasped. There was a gold mine. Everyone trusted Aaron. He never lied. James grinned and faced him. Next week, can you tell my parents that? Yeah. James's parents listened to Aaron's story intently. You were right, James. Ginny hugged her son. We're sorry we didn't believe you before. Well, what are you going to do now that you know the truth? We'll invite him over for dinner. James choked on his own spit. He must have heard wrong. What? I said invite him over for dinner. You'll see. When Professor Morton arrived, Harry asked to see him in his office. He had a new spell to show him, a historical one. He brought down his wand upon him until he was just black flecks floating around. It worked! Harry danced into the other room triumphant. My new spell! He's gone now, for good. Yes! James said, pumping his hand in the air. Now then, he turned to his mother. What's for dinner? I'm starving. So, the author's note at the bottom says, for the Billy Castle Bats Seeker. Had to do a crossover with a book. I did it with Goosebumps. Number 8, The Girl Who Cried Monster. Did you like it? I know the ending was a bit odd. And then there's a little sticky out face tongue guy.
But I'm really concerned about Professor Binns. Like,
he was just fired.
Like, what's he gonna do? He's kind of stuck there. He's just gonna wander around.
Well, now he can go find a cute girl ghost and hang out.
Cool. Cute girl ghost that he can bore.
Yeah. For the rest of their lives. But they're ghosts, so it'll be for eternity.
The rest of their deaths.
Yep.
That was all we had for today's episode. What are some interesting fan fictions that you found? Let us know in the comments.
If you'd like to get more lit, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, or anywhere else you listen to us. All of our other social media is linked below.
If you liked this episode, be sure to give it a like or rate our podcast. It really helps us keep doing what we love.
Until next time, bye.